Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is the Wizards of Ox Live. This is Monday, the 14th of November, and we're going to be talking everything holidays. We have Thanksgiving in the US coming up, and we have the rest of the December holidays coming along from different traditions, different countries, different places. The end of the year is a place where there's a lot of family reunions, a lot of food around those dates, and we're going to be talking about all those issues and your low oxalate lifestyle. As always, please remember that what we are saying in these talks does not constitute medical advice. This is a representation of our experience while we were living a low oxalate lifestyle and the research that we have been collecting in the Low Oxalate Project under the leadership of Susan Owens. So we are assuming that you have somebody that is taking care of your medical needs. And without further ado, we're just going to start talking food, holidays, and family.
And all the fun that goes with that.
Absolutely. So I'm sorry, I didn't introduce everybody and I didn't introduce myself. So we have our lovely Monique Attinger from Canada. We have Carla Wiersma coming from Colorado, and she's already has snow, I think. And we have Susan Owens coming from Dallas. And I'm Patricia de la Garza, and I'm talking to you from Brussels in Belgium. Just be welcome. If you're joining us live, make sure that you ask any questions or add any comments on the chat. We will be following up and commenting on it. And if you're looking at this not live, you can also put your comments either in the Trying Low Oxalate groups where we're posting these videos, or in the YouTube channel, which is Wizards of Ox. Okay, now everybody can get started.
Do you want to take it away, Carla, to begin with? You're the one who has the very interesting Thanksgiving coming up. So you can speak to some of this complexity that can be happening when we get together with family and friends.
Yes. So this Thanksgiving, we have about 16 people coming over. Some are Jewish, some are Muslim. We have one with a turkey poultry allergy, and we're also low oxalate. So it's been a bit of a challenge to develop recipes that can be kosher and parv, can be halal, or poultry free, as well as low oxalate. And I'm keto, so trying to at least make some things that, you know, I can have that are keto. And two of my kids are Jewish, but they are not Orthodox Jews. However, we do have one of my son's friends who is an Orthodox Jew who is coming over, as well as some of his other college classmates who aren't going to be able to go home for Thanksgiving. So we're having them over too. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And I have some recipes that thankfully meet that need, but we still have, you know, some traditional recipes for those that don't have any dietary restrictions, you know, that they can have. And, you know, some people just don't, you know, they don't want turkey bacon or turkey sausage. So, you know, Greg's in charge of that, of making the traditional stuff that all the others can have. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's going to be an interesting challenge. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you'll definitely have to report back, because the thing that I think most people worry about is what are they going to be able to eat, and whether or not you can handle complicated dietary needs like this and still be able to eat low oxalate. So, you know, in our family, we have become very adept at taking a traditional recipe and hacking it. So, you know, this is one of the things that that we thought might be helpful today. So I'm going to share my screen because I've got a link to a bunch of very traditional, you know, North American anyway, Thanksgiving recipes here, and would love to be able to just let everybody get a chance to see what might be possible and not necessarily as complicated or difficult as you might imagine. So when you're looking at something like a recipe and you're wondering about whether or not you can do it, best thing to do, don't spend a lot of time working yourself up, get to the ingredients. And in this one, because it's bread pudding, this is something my family loved. So this is something I ate many times as a child. If you've got a decent low oxalate bread, then you're already most of the way there on this particular recipe. Raisins are not that high. You're using milk. You might have to use coconut milk if you've got a dairy allergy. But the bad thing here is when you get to this 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, where do we go from here? If you want real traditional cinnamon flavor, you can go to a cinnamon extract, or you can go to a cinnamon spice drop. One of the companies that we've had their products tested is Holy Llama spice drops out of the UK. They have some really nice product there where it tastes a lot like the fresh spice. So you get that stronger cinnamon flavor probably from the spice drop. But the other thing I've done with a recipe that calls for ground cinnamon, if you don't want to get fancy and have to buy all these unusual ingredients to use in a recipe, is I've used ground cardamom for when it's calling for cinnamon. Lower oxalate. And with a switch out of a lower oxalate bread, we use gluten-free just on principle, and switching out the ground cinnamon for ground cardamom, you're good to go with this one. Just one example.
And if you're high oxalate, this might be, you know, something that you would just do as is if you're still working your way down.
That's actually a really good point. So this is, for those of you who are curious, I can always send out the link later. This is all sorts of traditional North American Thanksgiving recipes. Although I would argue that pumpkin tahini pie would not be a place where you'd want to go here. But, you know, some of these are going to be fine even without a lot of hacking. This corn casserole is one that I took a look at. Again, we'll just go straight down to the ingredients. Whole kernel corn, low oxalate, canned cream corn, low oxalate, sour cream, butter, eggs, all low oxalate. The challenge here would be you'd have to know how much oxalate would be in your dry cornbread mix here. We do have, I think, some corn masa and other products tested. We might have to like look at the ingredients to sort of eyeball this and see where it would come in. But this might be, again, something where if it fits otherwise inside your family's tolerances, and you know, if you're not necessarily at a fully compliant low oxalate diet yet, you might do fine with something like this. And don't you have a cornbread mix, Carla?
I do. It's on our recipe group, and it uses polenta
There you go.
instead of the regular cornmeal, because that's much lower oxalate. Another thing, if you can't have dairy, plain coconut yogurt And they actually have a Greek coconut yogurt that's comes pretty close to sour cream, taste wise, and should be fairly low oxalate. I know the plain coconut yogurt is for, I think, 6 ounces. So, but within, depending on the number of servings, it would still come out low oxalate.
And
I
that
also looked at this.
And I just wanted to add that serving size is also really important, because you do not have to feel that you can't have it. That doesn't mean that you can't have, a couple of teaspoons or else, a big spoonful or something like that. And that's pretty good portion if you consider everything else that's on the table that you might be able to eat. So kind of don't feel, restricted and that you cannot do anything. And, if you take a taste of a potato, it will not kill you. So just don't eat half the casserole.
I'm
But-
drooling
And
looking
there's
at those
those
potatoes.
condiment size portions, right? I think
Exactly.
where you do have just a little bit, or I think we've also talked before about making sure that you take a mineral supplement before you do, some of these things where you might be encountering a bit more oxalate.
And
But
take
in
it
this
with
case-
you if you are, going to somebody else's home. Make sure
Yeah.
you have it with you.
Yes.
Yeah, we take things like blister packs of a calcium magnesium tablet that we can just poke out, and it's lower dose, so we can kind of dose appropriately. Maybe there's more, maybe there's less, depending on what we're eating. But another thing you could do is here's a fairly classic scalloped potato kind of recipe, which they've called, potatoes au gratin. You could do this quite easily with rutabaga or with kohlrabi, which my dad used to do all the time, or with turnip. And then all of a sudden you're not having as much oxalate. But the other thing we've done on some occasions, I'm sure other people among us have done this, is I might use about 1/3 potato and like 2/3 rutabaga. And so 2 slices of rutabaga, 1 potato, 2 slices of rutabaga, 1 potato. As I'm building up my dish here, we are adding to it some milk and some cheese. So I know there's calcium and minerals built right in to help everybody who's eating some of this potato deal with it okay. And you can take your oxalate down a lot by some simple substitutions, which, I want people to be encouraged to, to look at a recipe and go, well, maybe there's a way I can do this. What if I just think a little outside the box?
And you have to think about who's going to be there, because if you have some people that, insist that they have to run the show, I mean, that's another thing that can happen. Or if you have somebody that is just so picky, it has to be done the same way it's always been done, then you may have to sort of modify what you do. But if you have some people who are like kind of foodies and I want to try something new, then they might be really excited about trying your rutabaga casserole. So it all depends
And
on
you
your
can
guy.
also have 2 versions, right? So we've had sometimes family
Oh, yeah.
get-togethers where we had 2 versions, right? There was the traditional, regular. A great example is I have some family members for whom mashed potatoes are, sacred. So we couldn't play with the one big bowl of mashed potatoes. So we had some mashed potatoes made the way mom's always made them. And then we would have some mashed potatoes where it was half cauliflower. And, eventually the ones who felt that mashed potatoes were sacred were willing to try maybe some of the other things. And so it may or may not remain that you have 2 dishes and you have to mark whose is what. But, that is another way to make sure that everybody can enjoy their holiday, because that's kind of the idea too.
That's what we're going to be doing. I mean, we have folks that are going to have mashed potatoes and they're actually bringing it. We're doing mashed cauliflower with leeks, and we're making it dairy free. So we're adding some Daiya cheese and making it with coconut milk. And then we're going to have a mix of the two. So, and we're going to have everything labeled as to, this is halal, this is parv, this is kosher, so we don't, someone doesn't eat something that they're, not supposed to. So we're going to have little labels on everything. So folks know what they can and can't eat. And those, we have some folks that are going to be bringing multiple dishes that, most people can have, and, that'll work. So hopefully, we accommodate everybody.
Thanks, Carla. That helps, especially when we have people that have like sacred foods, like the mashed potatoes that Monique was talking about. It's talking about it in advance, not getting excited and tense and waiting what's going to happen on Thanksgiving Day, but rather, why don't you call them tomorrow and say, listen, I know you love your potatoes, and can you bring the potatoes the way you like them? Because we are going to be making the baked potatoes with the cauliflower, which I think it's going to be interesting. And I'd love to hear your opinion. And all of a sudden they know in advance that there's going to be something that they haven't tried yet, but they have some comfort food that they know they can fall back on. And all of a sudden the drama and the stress and the tensions disappear on their own. So it's something that it really works. And just having multiple smaller portions of different things just make it for a very adventurous, day. And that's really, really fun. And we've even gone one Christmas, actually, we decided to make a shepherd's pie Christmas. And everybody brought their own shepherd's pie. So we had the vegans, and we had the vegetarians, and we had the low oxalate, and we had the regular one, and we had whatever, and then everybody ate from what they could, but then everybody tasted a little bit of the other one, and we actually voted, and we had to guess ingredients, and it became a fun thing. So, as long as people know what's coming or why it's happening, and you give them a little bit of time to adjust, it's a really, really good way of avoiding those last minute problems when you have, a lot of food that you can't eat.
And there are some companies that make these little place cards for, like, if you have a group and you can say, this is where so-and-so sits and that kind of thing, but you can use it to label the gluten-free or casein-free or low oxalate or Hillel or just whatever. You can buy a whole bunch of those and have them on hand, especially. I think Carla was telling us a few minutes ago that how many people were in the Wiersma household?
My husband has 10 siblings.
Okay, there you go.
So when the Wiersma clan would go to, when we would go to Ohio, which is where most of his family's at, it was, 10 siblings plus their spouses, plus their kids. And at the time when my in-laws were still alive, they were there. So, Thanksgiving could easily be 70, 75 people, if not 100.
Well, let me ask you this question, because this has not been something that my family is like diminishing down to nothing. But I know there are a lot of families that have tons and tons of children. And how has that made it different when you're trying to figure out how to make this work?
Well, when we went over there, usually we would stay either at the house, and we had, things that the groups of us would cook. But generally speaking, my in-laws were really good about, what things can you have, what things can't you have. This is what we're having. Feel free to, to tell us, what we can make. And typically what we would do if we weren't staying with them, we would stay in a hotel that had a kitchen. And I would just make a couple of dishes that I knew everyone, within our family could have, and particularly, Ian, that he could have. And I would just bring them over, and we would go to the grocery store and pick up, like a fruit and veggie tray. Or, with his family, it was a couple of fruit and veggie trays to make sure everybody had something.
We
wanna ask a-
always tend to take something we can eat if someone else wants to handle all the arrangements. Well, I'll try to give people as much information as possible, but sometimes it gets a little bit like I'm determining what the menu is, right? So now we've started to get to the point where we can give somebody the broad strokes. And then I always turn up, whether asked or not, with a dish or maybe two to share. I couch it that way. These are dishes for us to be able to share. And then I know there's something that we'll be able to eat.
And that on that end, oh, sorry, Susan, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, we've been talking mainly about side dishes. And so what I wanted to ask about was stuffing the turkey and what modifications anybody's made for that.
That's a really good one, because my mom, when I was a kid, we already started this. The bird's not stuffed. The stuffing was in a separate pot or container or a cast iron pan or something, and it was in the oven separately. Or she would do this kind of stuffing, which I really loved, where the spices I had determined were okay from an oxalate standpoint, but she would do it on the stovetop, and it had more to do with making sure there was just a little bit of celery in there for this flavor that celery gives it, that nothing else seems to work for, right? But what we did was, kind of what we were doing a little bit at the beginning here. I looked over her recipe and I went, okay, bring this down a little bit, let's sub something for this. And we did it in such a nuanced way that it still tasted like my mom's stovetop stuffing. And even my brothers, who had the issue with the sacredness of mashed potatoes, didn't realize they were getting something that wasn't, my mom's regular. It was a nuanced sort of play with the spices a little bit and take down the celery a little bit, but you still had the flavor as long as you still had some celery in it. So it was very, it was one of those things where, because we'd never had the tradition of actually stuffing the actual carcass of the bird, we never had to worry about gluten as a cross contaminant or something in the bird. We never had to worry about any of that because we didn't have that as a tradition.
Yeah, we didn't either. And my husband was the stuffing. He's the Thanksgiving king. He literally most years does everything but the dessert. And he leaves the dessert up pretty much up to me, but he's the one that's doing the yams, the green bean casserole, the mashed potatoes, the turkey, even though he's not a turkey fan. He would throw in like some steaks to go along with it. We'd have the turkey and he would have the steaks, but he made the stuffings. And literally what I would do was make a loaf of coconut bread and then toast it up and, make it into like, little croutons. And he would make stuffing for Ian and myself with that. And he would add a little bit of celery, but I would chop up some bok choy and throw that in there so we could still kind of get the celery crunch because we both kind of like that, but still keep it low oxalate. So, all I had to do was, provide specific things. And, he would be like, get out of the kitchen. I'll let you know when everything's done. And he would make the sausage stuffing that we could have and the sausage stuffing that the rest of the Wiersmas, would consume. And he would do trays, just trays of that, 5-6 pounds of sausage and, boxes of Mrs. Cubbison's, seasoned stuffing cubes. And then a little tray for Ian and me.
That's
Well,
fabulous.
in my family, we always had cooked the dressing separately, like you said, Monique. But we still stuff this turkey, and what we put inside of it is just chopped up celery and onions. But I don't think enough of that has oxalate that would leak into the turkey that you would end up eating it. So,
What we always stuffed it with was apples and the mushrooms and onions. Apples, mushrooms, and onions, and it just went inside with some, garlic and whatever, and just a stick of celery just to give it that little taste. But the stick of celery would come out completely out and just not be part of the food. But the veggies will be absolutely lovely. Sometimes to add some moisture, we would also put some zucchini, just some zucchini slices in there so that they would release their moisture and make sure that the bird remained moist. And that worked really, really well.
One of our friends is bringing a rice stuffing or dressing.
I've done that as well. Put a little bit of rice in there, or even some meat, but mostly our stuffing. And it's something that that everybody kind of likes now is, that coming out of those very fragrant apples with with the onions, the garlic, and the celery and the mushrooms.
I've actually
Cranberries
cooked
too.
birds where I put a little bit of apple juice and then a little bit of fruit after salting the inside of the cavity. That's another way where it's not it's not a stuffing, but it does enhance any of the pan drippings. So you get a different kind of pan drippings that are a little bit sweetened from using the little bit of juice and fruit. And we did do that for a while, and people did like that as an alternative. But we do get emotionally attached to certain kinds of foods, and so I think over time I saw more people try like muffins that I would bring, or other kinds of things that we knew were low oxalate that they hadn't had before. But I think it's helpful to remember that we are emotionally attached to the way that we eat, and to give people a bit of time and space to sort of absorb that somebody in the family or in the circle of friends has these new needs, but that it doesn't mean they have to give up everything that they like, like that there's some give and take there. Yeah.
And that's a perfect segue to the point that I wanted to make before, which is our kids, many times they have their favorite foods. And many times it becomes a drama when they have to eat the turkey and they haven't eaten turkey in their lives, or they don't remember they've eaten it. And especially with some of our kids on the spectrum, teens in particular, there's nothing wrong with eating a hamburger on Thanksgiving. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having their favorite foods presented to them and them not participating food-wise. But if they are okay with sitting at the table and participating at least for a little bit of the meal, that to me is a success. So there's nothing wrong with letting them eat foods that they feel comfortable with, because already being in a very large family situation with different noises and smells and sounds and commotion, many times it's a really big deal. So give them something that they can feel, okay and safe and in a very comfortable place in front of them. So thank you for that segue, Monique.
Oh, and you're so welcome, because as a proud child of a French Canadian, we have a question, which is about green beans, all-time favorite and very cultural in French Canadian culture. I can vouch for this. How bad is it to have a little bit? There are Brussels sprouts, but they get boring after a while. Cauliflower too, and high on FODMAP for those with those issues. So yeah, I totally understand this. And interestingly enough, green beans is one of our favorite foods. We got in a little bit of trouble with this because we were eating it raw, like eating green beans raw out of the garden, and that wasn't good. But for something like a green bean casserole, which is one of the things that I remember we had, I would probably boil the beans first, maybe not cook the casserole as long, just to bring down some of the oxalate in green beans, because they can add up. But then if you have a small serving like we're talking about here, maybe it doesn't have to be a condiment size serving. Maybe it doesn't have to be teeny tiny. If you've taken down some of the oxalate in the beans, because beans, if you can find beans that are listed as runner beans, or there's certain varieties where they were a bit lower, you might be able to have, maybe it's a 1/4 cup serving, but it's still, if it's your all-time favorite. I think what we're saying here is that, it shouldn't have to be all about deprivation either. Like, yeah, it's great to find some hacks that really work for you and your family. My family loves kohlrabi. If I do kohlrabi and potatoes and make a scalloped something, they are completely happy with that. And so I don't necessarily have to make a 100% potato dish at home, for instance. And I can even use more kohlrabi than the potato, and so everybody's fine. But if it's something where you've got an ingredient where you might benefit a little bit by either boiling them first, or maybe using, and I've done this a couple of times, I've used a canned green bean.
Yep.
Now,
Del Monte has one that's medium.
Yeah. Del Monte, and was there another one that we tested? I can't remember now. I think it was just the Del Monte that we tested. I'll rinse them really well. I might bring them up to a boil without actually fully boiling them to get some of that canning liquid taste, for lack of a better word, out of them. And in fact, now that we're talking about this, I've actually used canned potatoes to make roasted potatoes in the oven, or make hash browns in a pan, because you've already had them lose a lot of their oxalate. But what I'll do again with those potatoes is probably drain everything off, put them in fresh water, give them a short boil like that, just to get rid of that canned flavor. Once you've sauteed them in a pan with lots of butter, you'd never know.
One little hack is that if you have something that you can parboil, or, have in water where some of the oxalate can go into the water instead of staying in the food, one of the things that you can do is have a little jar of powdered calcium or magnesium or and then you just sprinkle it into the water so it's there to grab up the oxalate and help more of that possibly come out.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, that's a great hack. You have to be careful with the magnesium, because sometimes it has a bit of a taste, but the calcium works great in my experience.
I've never actually tried it with the magnesium, but we do know that magnesium also binds calcium. So,
binds oxalate. Yeah.
And if you're not
did I
dairy
say that
free,
wrong? I'm sorry.
You
Don't
said
get milk or
bind
yogurt.
calcium.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I didn't mean calcium. Magnesium
knew
will
you
bind
didn't.
the oxalate.
The
Sorry.
oxalate, yeah. So no, I always use the magnesium citrate. I buy it in bulk, and then, you know, I just put like a little measure spoon, like a tad or something. I just put it, you know, consistently every time I boil anything that, you know, to get rid of oxalate. So
Well, and for anybody who doesn't know what a tad is, spice measuring spoons can be your best friend when it comes to things like plain powdered supplements. So you can get a set where it starts at a drop, which is 1/64th of a teaspoon. And I didn't understand that things like a smidgen, a pinch, and a tad were an actual measure, but they are. So 1/64th of a teaspoon is a drop, 1/32nd is a smidgen, 1/16th is a pinch, 1/8 is a dash, 1/4 is a tad. So for those of you who do not use those kinds of measures normally, like the traditional North American teaspoon measures, that's what we're talking about.
yeah, that works really
Oh.
well.
I just had one more question about when you use rice in the stuffing. I just wanted to clarify, do you put it in raw?
No,
I don't.
Okay,
I don't.
so you
Uh,
use cooked rice.
Yep.
Okay,
Another thing.
anybody ever tried it raw? To see what would
I
happen?
haven't. I haven't because I really like it to be very juicy. So I really
Okay.
use those juices down. So I don't want anything to soak it up.
I just wanted to clarify because, you know, some of our watchers may try it and say, I wonder why this didn't turn out like they said.
Yeah.
I think I have tried like not sort of fully cooked, but kind of partially cooked. But I find that if rice is not fully cooked before you use it in something, sometimes it doesn't, like it's mealy, you know, it kind of has too much chew to it when you go to eat it. Because I've noticed if I use cooked rice to make rice pudding, another one of those things that that I love for Thanksgiving, like just the nice creamy rice pudding. And again, we would normally use cinnamon, but I've played around with cardamom and other things. But that really benefits from being the rice actually being cooked first and then cooking it with your milk. And so it's very interesting. It just doesn't seem to ever stop absorbing more liquid. So so cooked rice makes sense to me.
Okay,
All right,
I just
I'm
thought
going
some people
to,
might not know.
sorry, I was just gonna, I've let Patricia have the chance to share her screen as well. So
Okay. So I guess you can see it now.
yeah,
Okay, let me just put it like this. So this is just really something simple because many times it's not really the food where the issue is, especially with kids. It's with that pre-food. It's all those snacks that are all over the place. And there's all those things and you're like, oh my God. And you see things with chocolate and things with gluten and nuts and just all these things that just look absolutely yummy. And everybody's just munching them down. You're like, oh my gosh, what are my kids or what am I going to eat? And you know, and it's really at the core of this whole discussion because yes, many people say, oh yeah, well, she has a special diet, she's difficult, and all of a sudden everything becomes negative, you see. And that's what you want to avoid with that conversation we were talking about before. It's like, no, I'm cool, you know, but I'm going to bring some alternatives that I think might be better. And just make sure that your kids know that those things are not worth it. And eventually have like different alternatives. Sometimes, you know, when you saw, you know, the little hands going with a little corn candy or whatever, you know, I would have alternatives. It's like, how about you give me that corn candy and I give you a pencil with little colors or sparkles or whatever, you know, something like that, so that, you know, they can just get redirected. And also the other thing that we would do is that, wait a minute, what's it not moving? Is to show them different things that they can eat. And presentation is really, really important, especially for kids, but not only for kids. Even grandpa is going to look at that turkey on top and say, oh my gosh, how cool is that? And
True that it makes it fun for the celebration if the presentation is engaging, right?
exactly. And so you can make it really fun. You can make it really simple. You just have to get like a little bit of a, creativity. And on the internet, you can just say healthy snacks or something and start hacking it exactly like Monique did. So here there's raspberries at the bottom. Well, if you're already at a level where raspberries are not really part of what you want to give your kids, then you can put some watermelon, or you can put a piece of banana, or you can put, something else. But the idea, the creativity is there. And I think that's the most important thing. And the recipe that I wanted to share, I'm Mexican, but I have a lot of family in the US. We have been celebrating a lot of Thanksgiving. And my go-to thing is guacamole. Just all sorts of guacamole, different versions of guacamole. And I just gave you a little bit of a exotic one so that it seems party-like or a little bit more special than your regular guacamole that you would get at a Mexican restaurant. So this is mango guacamole. And basically you cut a mango, you put little pieces, and just the tanginess of the mango together with the creaminess of the avocado, it just makes for a really lovely dip. And depending on where you are in your oxalate journey, you can have red and yellow peppers, you can have cucumbers, you can have dip chips, like corn or whatever. Or if you're still coming down from 2,000 milligrams a day, you can dip celery and you'll still be okay. And so that whole idea of, just know where your danger zones might be and start preparing for them now.
And just because we've used this a fair bit when it comes to things like dips, because my family loves anything that involves finger food. Bok choy stems are very low oxalate, but give you that kind of ability to do what you could do with celery. You've got a gap, you could dig in with it. It's got good crunch. So there, sometimes we just have to think a little bit outside the box. Maybe you're looking at daikon radish sticks. Maybe you're looking at, other things that are just going to give you a much lower oxalate, but actually work really well. And daikon radish is not as hot as your regular radish. And so you can take it and peel it and cut it into sticks and also be able to use it to dip. So you can enlarge people's palate a little bit if you give them some things that maybe they can try while they're having something lovely like mango guacamole.
Jicama.
Jicama is a great option, a little bit sweet. So for people who like a carrot stick, because a carrot stick's a little bit sweet, jicama is a great option. And it's only medium oxalate. Yeah.
And low carb. So if you're,
and low carb for those of us who are doing that. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I like the daikon. Same thing. Yeah.
So that's a little bit the idea. And just try to innovate and just be, just have fun. I think that's the main thing. And just, just have fun with the food and don't get into a discussion of, is this kosher, for the lack of a better word, for Thanksgiving, or is it not? Well, no, it's not. No, the Pilgrims probably did not have mango guacamole, but let's have fun.
Well, and like, because of allergies and preferences and blah, 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 occasionally we will have prime rib for Thanksgiving. The traditional food is poultry, but, I think we need to be able to let ourselves outside of the box and enjoy the holiday and the celebration, as opposed to it must look like X.
we pretty much threw that out the window. We do have some, some traditionalists, but one of the things that has really helped us over the years, especially when we're doing the Thanksgiving as opposed to going to, going someplace else, is we make it potluck. This is what we're going to be. This is the Wiersma spread. You bring what works for you. If you want to bring a pie that's that's got gluten, knock yourself out. We will have a gluten-free and dairy-free option. Most of our stuff is going to be low oxalate. You're not going to get creamed spinach in our house. You will get creamed kale. If you want creamed spinach, feel free to bring it. Just make sure, I know the container so I can label it and say, I can look to my kid and say, no, you can't have that. But
well, and Carla and I both know the keto thing. So one of the things I wanted to say is that I actually became the one. We have a new Christmas tradition in our family now. I became the one who brings the low carb Bailey's alternative. And so when grown-ups want to have a grown-up thing, and I have a sister-in-law who loves Bailey's, but there's not a drop of sugar in this thing. And I know exactly what the ingredients are. And I painstakingly taste tested every batch, much to my husband's chagrin, when he had my slightly tipsy wife a couple times trying to figure out what the proportions were for this drink. But I think we can find things that look like or taste like what we enjoy. I think we can open up our palate and say maybe we have something completely different. I have a friend who's Portuguese, and for Thanksgiving every year, and she was born and raised in Canada, for Thanksgiving every year they have fish. So who's to say that you can't, try something new? But maybe it's a little bit of both. We bring people along with something that's enticing and interesting because of presentation, and just give people another way to enjoy a holiday together.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be stressful. I mean, that's the big thing, in our house. It used to be stressful, but when my son got sick and we brought him out of the hospital just in time for Thanksgiving, all that stress went out the window. His illness and subsequent recovery put so much into perspective for me about what really matters. And, for us, it wasn't following the tradition. It was the fact that we all did, really had something to be thankful for.
You're celebrating life.
Yes. I mean, my kid survived a pretty serious illness. The husband I've been married to for close to 25 years at that point, kept me sane. I kept him sane, still had my best friend with me. My family, extended family, wasn't necessarily with me, but they were keeping in touch with me every day. My Facebook family was also, keeping tabs. My in-laws were keeping tabs. That was really what was important. And now, I have 2 more in the family, and I'm thankful every day for them. So, the stress just goes out the window because I have so many blessings. Like, just can't really get all that much better. I'm going to look towards the positive.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that about 5 years ago, my mother was in the hospital at Thanksgiving. And so my family arranged for us to do a potluck in the hospital lobby. And they had some tables there. And so we brought everything and we're sharing this, and we're hoping that my mother would come down, but she ended up not coming down. But we still had a lovely time of meeting together. And so again, it's all about being thankful. And we were thankful that my mother was still alive, and thankful that we actually could get together, and we managed to get people from different places that they lived in one spot. So yeah, you absolutely named it, Carla.
Absolutely. It's all about being grateful. It's all about all those great feelings and all that love that we do have for that uncle that's always complaining. You know, we love him. We love him. So let's just enjoy the love, and let's enjoy the companionship, and let's enjoy the food, not feel deprived, and have that little bit of green beans, and just have a lovely Thanksgiving.
I think you've met my Uncle Norman, have you?
We're probably
We
one of-
did have a comment that somebody said about how cinnamon is a huge issue for fall and winter holiday celebration food. Same problem in Canada as in the US. But I think there's starting to be a little bit of a movement out there where you can find something with cinnamon added or without it. So things like pumpkin, which used to be, you could only get pumpkin with the spices and sugar already added. Carla and I were actually talking about this before we started recording, that, you know, now we can start to be able to buy something like a pumpkin as opposed to a butternut, a canned butternut, although either works for most recipes, where there isn't the spices added. So here's hoping there's more awareness as time goes on that cinnamon, like many other things, is not one size fits all for everyone out here. And, you know, for someone who's got a legitimate cinnamon allergy, not just you're avoiding oxalate, because, you know, it's one of those things, again, where a little bite of something that's got cinnamon in it may be fine, especially if you're going to feel incredibly deprived if you don't have it, right? So a little bite of something would be better. But if you're avoiding something because you do have an allergy, that's label reading 101. Like, pick up that pumpkin, read the ingredients, you know, don't just buy it without checking, because there is a difference in the oxalate level as well for those of you who are not dealing with an allergy.
Well, we talked about this a little bit, but you don't know which one of your guests might have an allergy, and you don't know about it. So that's good preparation for such a meeting of family, is to ask everybody who's coming as a guest if there's any serious allergies like that you have to watch out for.
Well, but even the sensitivities. My husband, as he's gotten older, he cannot eat onions. So if we at least know which dishes have onions or the onion family in them, then he can say, okay, maybe I'll have a little taste of this, but maybe I'm going to skip everything else that's got onion in it. I mean, it's not an oxalate issue as far as I can tell, but his stomach won't handle it anymore. And so you can get, you know, surprises over time too, because I guarantee you, when I married this man over 25 years ago, there was no onion issue. And in fact, we used to laughingly say that the smell of garlic was the smell of love, because he would cook meals where he used tons of garlic. And we had this house where if the windows were open, I would come out of the garage, the underground parking, and we were in like these stacked townhouses, and I'd be able to smell the garlic as I was coming out of the underground. I knew it was him. So, but we don't eat like that anymore because his system doesn't handle it. So, you know, rather, maybe it's a great call to everybody, like, not to assume. Don't assume. Just ask a few questions. Maybe somebody else's tummy has started to not handle whatever, right? Like my husband's with onion.
We have a friend that's coming over who has a poultry allergy, and it's all poultry, chicken, turkey, duck, as long if it's an egg, he's good. Once it's hatched, no good. So when we have him and his family over for Thanksgiving, the turkey is in one area, and all the the knives, the fork, the carving stuff is all in one area. I make sure that I don't make anything using chicken broth. I'll use, like, my husband usually makes the stuffing with chicken broth. Well, when Dave's over, it's vegetable broth. Because even the broth will trigger a reaction. But we ask for the folks that are that are coming over. I know the folks that are coming over for this Thanksgiving, besides the religious restrictions, one of the things that I had my son ask was, your guests that you've invited, do they have any dietary restrictions? Do we have any that are gluten-free, have peanut allergies, dairy allergies, anything like that? I need to know, so we can be aware of that, because I really don't want to see anyone go into anaphylactic shock. I've already, been there, done that, seen that before with the friend with the turkey allergy who decided to have a turkey wrap, even though he knew he was allergic. He did, he hadn't had turkey in years and just couldn't resist. And he ended up going to the hospital. Thank God he survived, but his wife darn near killed him. She was so mad, but we don't really want to experience that. So, all my guests know if they have dietary restrictions, they're going to let me know. So we can, for allergies, like I said, we don't want anyone going to the emergency room because we poisoned them.
And it's such a way of showing that we care. I think it's something that is happening, and more, Susan has been explaining, when she explains about the inflammasome and she explains about all these things that happen with oxalate, this is something that's happening more and more. So we shouldn't be surprised to hear people that probably were eating everything before, all of a sudden are starting to have issues. And just the fact, if you're hosting for Thanksgiving dinner, the fact that you call them and you say, I am concerned about you. I want to make you feel at home in my home. I want you to feel that the food is something that you can eat and enjoy. Is there anything we need to avoid? It's just opening the door to a lot of conversations. It's opening the door to a lot of respect for the others, because then they would appreciate that you called everybody. So, if you see a dish that's weird, or, mashed potatoes with cauliflower, and, yes, it's because so-and-so can have a lot of potatoes because of oxalates. It just opens that discussion. And when it's done in the name of love and acceptance and understanding and everything that, and family, and just, learning how to be together, I think it can be a lovely, lovely holiday again.
Can I
Yeah.
describe a little surprise that we had? I guess probably the last Christmas. I can't remember when it was. But, my daughter has been gluten-free since she was 4 years old. And so she didn't grow up eating a lot of things that everybody else thinks are very ordinary. And so now suddenly there are all these products coming out that are lookalikes. And so one of the things that she wants to know is, does this taste like the real thing? And so when you have a mix of your family, so that you have people that know what the original thing tasted like, then you can have somebody that can say, oh yeah, I tasted that. Oh yeah, it's just perfect. Or somebody can say, it's pretty good. but it's not really like the original. And so that's kind of fun. That's another little fun thing that you can work into the gathering.
That's
Yeah.
right. Well, unless anybody has questions, it's been an hour. And we are, well, all of us here obviously wishing you a lovely, lovely Thanksgiving feast and a lovely family reunion, tons of gratitude. And I just want to say I'm grateful to these ladies. They've kept me sane more times than that I dare to say. And especially to Susan, we would not be where I am sitting right now if it wasn't for you. Beautiful. Thank you so much. You're always in my gratitude list. And we wish you all, well, I guess I'll let everybody say their own thing, but I wish you all a lovely, lovely holiday.
Yes, we've got Christmas coming up. We have Hanukkah coming up. We have New Year's coming up. There's all sorts of wonderful reasons to get together with friends and family to celebrate right now. And so definitely want to say my thanks to my fellow wizards, and yeah, definitely to Susan, because when we found this diet 14 years ago, it's hard to imagine it's been that long. And I remember my husband saying, not another diet. And the good news is it's been the last one. So, you know, to everyone who's listening near and far, health and all the best, because that's what gives life its zest, right? The better we feel, the more we can take advantage of what we have, the blessings that we have. And definitely it's good to be grateful.
Agree. I'm grateful for my Wizards family, my new family addition, my military family, who is going to be joining me, and my blood family. You know, like I said, there's just so much to be grateful for that, you know, I tell people my cup does indeed runneth over. So I hope you all have a very wonderful Thanksgiving.
Well, you know, my family, we've just gotten smaller and smaller every generation. And so there's not very many that are physically related to me anymore. But I tell you, through the internet and through knowing you ladies and through knowing all the ways that our group has expanded and helped us get out of whatever box we were in to start off with. I mean, I am so thankful because my life is so much more rich because I've been able to learn from all of you how your lives are different and how really to make my life better from listening to all of you. And so I want to thank you all for your participation in the Triangle Oxalates groups. And you know, we're going to get there. The name of the game is that we all end up being the best we can be, because, you know, when you don't feel good, you aren't the best that you can be. And so that's our goal. And we want to get you there. And so I'm thankful that you're part of our world. Thank you.
And with that, we'll leave you. And let's see you then next Monday for another Wizard to Box Live. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.